Have you ever wondered where those small capsules that hold more power than they seem actually come from? Most people imagine ammunition is made by robots in futuristic factories, all controlled by computers and state-of-the-art sensors. But what if I told you that, somewhere in the world, hundreds of 9mm cartridges are produced every single day by hand? Yes, using manual presses, simple tools, and a level of skill that could challenge any automated line. In Pakistan, there is a production chain that looks like it came straight out of an old movie, except it works. And it works so well that it supplies entire markets with speed, precision, and a lot of sweat. But how can something so dangerous and sensitive be made without modern technology? Is it safe? Is it reliable? And more importantly, why has this country, of all places, become a hub for ammunition production? If you are like me and always find yourself wondering, how is this even made? Or, who came up with this crazy idea first? Then you are in the right place. In the heart of a factory in Pakistan, the metallic sound of presses blends with the heavy, humid air. That is where the almost choreographed process of crafting 9mm bullets begins. Each piece of brass is shaped with precision, but before that, the metal arrives in long rolls, almost like paper coils. It is unrolled, cut, and pressed into small cups that will become the base of every cartridge. Visually, it feels like an industrial ballet, with every movement repeated hundreds of times per minute. After shaping the capsule, the next stage begins, filling it with gunpowder, technically called propellant. This step demands near-surgical precision. Machines dose each capsule with the exact amount, as if they were seasoning an invisible recipe. The slightest mistake could be fatal, both for those making it and those using it. In the background, the sounds of conveyor belts and hydraulic hammers blend into a hypnotic rhythm that sets the tempo of production. The final stage is almost magical. The bullet is seated with millimetric accuracy while the primer, that tiny component that ignites the gunpowder, is carefully fitted. It all happens in fractions of a second, using old but incredibly functional machinery. It is not unusual to see workers adjusting parts by hand, as if they had known every gear since birth. And the most impressive part, even with limited resources, the line never stops. Everything begins with brass, that golden metal that almost shines like jewelry under factory lights. It arrives in sheets or tubes, and with a few mechanical strikes and precise cuts, transforms into the small capsules that form the cartridge case. It is fascinating to see how a formless piece of metal becomes something so functional. In the footage, workers operate presses that mold each piece one by one, with almost artisanal precision. At this stage, metallurgy turns into craftsmanship. Then comes the explosive core, the gunpowder, one of the most delicate steps of all. Using a simple spoon adapted to a repetitive motion, the exact charge is placed inside the capsule. No electronic sensors, no digital scales, just trained eyes and perfectly practiced movements. This is where trust in human skill reaches its peak, because one wrong measure could ruin everything. And yet, the process flows, fast, steady, almost hypnotic. The final assembly happens like a perfectly timed mechanical puzzle. The primer, that tiny piece that starts the ignition, is placed firmly in position. Then the projectile is pressed into the case. Done. The cartridge is complete. From raw brass to finished ammunition, the entire journey is done by hand, step by step. It looks simple from the outside, but it demands experience and precision from those who do it. What is most surprising is that even with such rudimentary methods, the system works, and it works remarkably well. At first glance, the setting looks improvised. Dimly lit workshops, conveyor belts made from recycled parts, workers sweating in silence. But behind that seemingly chaotic scene lies an invisible mechanism working with surprising precision. It is estimated that these factories, despite their simplicity, can produce up to 20 million 9mm cartridges a year. That number is astonishing, especially when you realize most of it is done without automation, powered only by human skill, determination, and endless repetition. Each worker seems to know the exact rhythm of every movement. Their hands move like extensions of the machines themselves. A press goes down, the case rotates, the bullet is inserted, and the cartridge takes shape. This cycle repeats hundreds of times per hour, per person. According to some reports, an experienced worker can assemble almost one cartridge per second. The pace seems impossible, and yet it continues. Everything is done by feel, by touch, by knowledge passed down from father to son. No sensors, no blinking lights, just sweat and technique. Of course, that efficiency comes with a cost. Fatigue is visible on their faces, and repetition takes its toll on muscles and joints. The constant hammering of presses echoes for hours without pause, and despite the effort, many of these workers earn low wages, working shifts that stretch 10 to 12 hours a day. Still, there is a sense of pride in what they do. The real question is, how can something so complex work so well with so little? Maybe the answer lies in the heart of these people. But is human skill alone enough to ensure quality? In modern factories, sensors and software oversee every step of production, but here quality control has a different name: experience. Each cartridge is inspected visually, one, by hands and eyes that have seen thousands pass across the bench. It is an almost intuitive process. The operator spins the case, watches the bullet shine, checks for burrs or deformities. There are no automated lines rejecting parts. What exists is keen perception and practice repeated until exhaustion. In places like the Pakistan Ordnance Factories complex, this process is a bit more technical. There, some tests follow international standards, with samples being weighed, measured, and fired in small calibration shots. But in the workshops shown in the video, the inspection basically depends on common sense and the care of each worker. If a case is crooked or poorly sealed, it is simply set aside by hand. It may seem minimal, but it works, at least on the production scale where they operate. The curious point is that despite this simplicity, the error rate is not as high as you might think. Maybe it is luck, maybe it is practice, or maybe humans can still spot nuances that many machines miss. Of course, this raises an inevitable question. Can you trust this kind of control when what is at stake is something as delicate as a controlled explosion inside a steel barrel? Or does this hands-on care actually provide a level of precision machines have not yet matched? When the subject is gunpowder, primers, and projectiles, any carelessness can have serious consequences. In these artisanal factories, risk is constant and present in every corner. A wrong touch, an extra grain of powder, a misaligned case. Any small mistake can cause serious accidents. There are no containment barriers, special suits, or automatic emergency systems. What exists is a routine built on caution and repetition. Over time, each worker learns, through practice, where they can and cannot place their fingers. In large complexes like the Pakistan Ordnance Factories, international safety standards are followed. ISO, OTSAS, and strict protocols are in place. But in the workshops shown in the video, the scenario is very different. There, what protects people is knowledge passed down by word of mouth, informal training, and intuition. It is not uncommon to see operators without gloves, without goggles, even without masks, in an environment where any spark can start a tragedy. Still, production goes on daily. There is an important detail few people know. In regions like the Khyber Pass, there are reports of production using reused gunpowder, even from old film canisters, which raises the risk even more. This shows that improvisation, however clever, carries invisible dangers. The line between functionality and accident is thin, and it depends almost entirely on the experience of those involved. But after all, why does Pakistan invest so much in this type of production? Pakistan might not be the first country that comes to mind when we talk about ammunition production, but the reality behind these factories can surprise even the most skeptical. With unstable geopolitics and historically tense borders, the country found in arms production not only a defense strategy but also an economic pillar. Behind that structure stands the huge Pakistan Ordnance Factories, a military complex with more than a dozen factories across the country. And what is most striking, many of them operate with simple machinery and human hands doing most of the work. Inside these facilities, 9mm bullet production became routine. Even with the POF serving as a national reference, a parallel, almost artisanal network of small producers continues to operate in smaller towns and improvised workshops. The video you are watching shows exactly that scene. Workers lined up, operating hand presses, shaping cases, polishing bullets, and loading cartridges with the kind of accuracy that only habit can provide. There are no computers controlling the process. It is touch, it is the eye, it is repetition. As rudimentary as it may seem, this form of production has a real impact on local economies. Hundreds of families depend on what is produced in those simple, noisy lines. It is a harsh reality, yes, but also a resilient one. Demand comes from both domestic forces and informal exports. There is a certain pride in mastering this process with so few resources. One of the most fascinating details about these factories is the sound. Yes, the sound. Every machine has its own rhythm. The press that clicks like an old clock, the drum that spins with a metallic hiss, the dry drag of shells sliding down improvised rails. If you close your eyes, it feels like an orchestra made of iron and gunpowder. And that sound, believe it or not, is used by the workers as a signal. When something sounds off, they instantly know something is wrong on the line. The temperature also stands out. Even without huge furnaces or steam boilers, the heat inside these factories is constant. The friction of the presses, the repetitive movement, the lack of ventilation, and the warm metal make the environment heavy. But the most curious thing is that this is all considered part of the process. There are no thermometers or environmental sensors. Control is done through sweat on the forehead and years of practice. Another technical point worth mentioning is the longevity of the machines. Some of the presses used here are so old they look like museum pieces. Yet they still work, maintained with local parts, creative improvisations, and a lot of manual care. Every replaced screw becomes almost a ritual. And through it all, the most impressive thing is how this system survives without high technology. It makes you wonder, does sophistication always beat simplicity? Or maybe sometimes persistence is what really matters. Once completed, the 9mm cartridges go through another important step: sorting and packing. No robotic arms placing pieces into boxes here. Human hands are still in charge. Each cartridge is placed one by one into metal trays or cardboard molds, which are then sealed with simple strips and reinforced boxes. The care is visible, but everything is done quickly, as if each motion had been repeated 1,000 times before. The boxes are then labeled by hand and stacked with the help of basic carts. Some factories still use analog scales to ensure the weight is correct, showing just how much these processes rely on operator trust, not automation. From there, they go to storage or straight to transport, destined for local security forces or external buyers. Some destinations are legal, others not so much, but everything flows silently, efficiently, and fast. The most surprising part is that even with so many manual steps, delivery errors are rare. That is because everyone involved knows a single mistake could harm the factory's reputation. There is a collective effort to make sure every box arrives intact, whether at a battalion, a private buyer, or an international reseller. And as the boxes disappear into trucks or containers, the production line behind them is already working on the next batch. Did you know that in Pakistan there are local ammunition brands with names like Yadgar, Diamond, and Sher? These brands, often unknown outside the region, circulate among collectors, enthusiasts, and even international markets. Some are known for their rustic design, others for their reliability, and all carry a sense of local pride. Seeing these cartridges with their brand stamped on the base is like observing a cultural signature engraved in metal. It is a small detail, but it says a lot about identity and tradition. Another fascinating fact lies in the craft itself, which has become almost cultural in regions like Dara Adam Khel. There, gun and ammunition manufacturing is passed down through generations. It is not just a job, it is a legacy. It is common to see young people learning from an early age how to shape parts, calibrate presses, and handle gunpowder with impressive ease. For many, this craft is more than income. It is family heritage, just like a baker learning from his grandfather how to knead the perfect bread. And it does not stop there. Although this video focuses on 9mm rounds, other calibers are also produced in these workshops. The 7.62x25 Tokarev, for example, is still widely used and made in parallel. This variety shows how even small-scale, handcrafted industries adapt to market demand, a direct reflection of the region's military influences. Working in a manual production line like this requires more than physical strength. It demands mental endurance and absolute focus. Shifts often exceed 10 hours a day, with minimal breaks and constant repetition. The pace is intense because the process is almost entirely manual. Presses are operated by arm, cases are rotated by eye, and assembly happens with no automation at all. There is no button to press and wait for the machine to finish the job. It is sweat from start to finish. Even so, the output is impressive. Experienced operators know the exact timing of each step and can assemble dozens of cartridges per minute. It is as if their bodies have memorized the motions. Some use improvised supports to keep their posture longer. Others use handmade tools they designed themselves. There is practical intelligence in every movement, and that is what keeps the line running like clockwork, even without high-end technology. And how much do they earn for all that? On average, wages range from 20 to 30,000 Pakistani rupees per month, which is roughly $150. It is not much, but for the region, it represents a stable source of income. Despite the limitations, there is a strong sense of pride. The workers know that what they make is valuable, and that they are part of a system that sustains not only the factory, but also a large portion of local and international demand for ammunition. But before all of this reaches the final consumer, there is still one last essential step ahead. They do not wear safety goggles. They have no futuristic robots. They do not operate digital panels or rely on artificial intelligence to decide if a case is ready to be assembled. And yet, cartridges come out perfectly aligned, one after another, with almost choreographed precision, surrounded by old machines, manual hammers, and that echoing metallic sound. Can you believe that in 2025, Pakistan launched rockets into space but still has not incorporated modern technology into ammunition manufacturing? Strange, isn't it? That contrast is mind-blowing. On one side, space missions and satellites. On the other, an ammunition process that carries the weight of centuries, repeated by hand, with no digital control, almost like a ritual. It makes you wonder, has technological progress really reached everywhere? Or have some areas simply been left behind? If you made it this far, leave your greeting in the comments and tell me which city and country you are watching from. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because here we show you the real world from the inside, where there is always something surprising hidden behind what seems simple. It may sound absurd, but that is how these production lines keep running.